Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? My name is Matthew Groves, and I am running a little behind today, but we're still good. I don't have my coffee ready just yet. That's the main consequence of running behind. So it's over there percolating right now. So I'm going to have to take an earlier break than normal to go get myself a cup. But I'm glad you're here with me, and I hope the lighting's not too harsh. But I'm happy you're here, and we're going to continue working today on the article stuff. I want to get to delete and unfollow. Pretty straightforward, I think. Delete article removes it from existence. That's what I decided on doing. And unfollow is the reverse of endpoint we've already created. So that's what we're working on today. There actually is one more thing that I forgot. I wasn't paying close attention last time with the articles. In fact, let me show you the spec here. Update article, returns an updated article. This little field right here, totally forgot about it. Did not create that for any other endpoint because I didn't need it. Totally forgot to add it here. So I was actually going through the process of writing some unit tests for the update handler, just doing that off the stream because it's pretty rote stuff. And then I realized, oh no, I'm missing a field. So I thought I'd knock that out here first. Shouldn't be too hard to do. I've already done part of it, the data layer, I think. I can show you that, but just need to make sure it gets returned by the endpoint. So we'll knock that out, and then we'll go on to delete article and unfollow article. So welcome. Hope you're having a good Friday. And maybe just a quick recap of what the heck this project is that I'm deleting articles and favoriting articles from. So I kind of showed you already this web page here. This is the real world docs. And this includes the specs for a project called Conduit, which is a spec that's both a front-end spec and a back-end spec. So we're talking a web application here. And you can mix and match them. And so what happens here is that people create implementations of whatever spec they want to. So someone create a front-end spec in React or Aurelia or Vue or whatever. And someone would create a back-end spec in Java or .NET or PHP or whatever, and they could use a database of their choice, like Couchbase, what I'm doing for mine. And they can use whatever other framework they want to use, so ASP.NET or Laravel or Spring or whatever. And what we end up with is hundreds of example projects of the same spec doing the same thing, but in all different languages, frameworks, databases, and tools. So this is the goal of this is to be more than a simple to-do demo introduction. It's trying to use all these features to really show off the framework and help people learn frameworks and databases and languages. So that's the idea. I'm over halfway through an ASP.NET plus Couchbase backend implementation. That's what I'm working on with this stream. And back over here is my main view. This is what I've done already. This is all on GitHub, by the way. This is the issues I've done already, and here's the ones I have left to do. So definitely over halfway done, I'd say. Maybe give or take, because some of these are a little more complex. But with that said, let's get into it. I want to get this updated taken care of, because I've already moved the card over. So technically speaking, I need to move this card back. So I'm working on right now. So these are the integration tests for updates articles. So I need to, there's a happy path on here. And I think that's what I want to make its own test, is what I'm going to do. So not that one. We had talked about that one last time, but we're not updating tags. Why is this one tags? Update article succeed. So this is, okay. I could probably just add the assert here, right? Response. So this is just testing that the article is in fact updated, but it shouldn't also return, response returns. Those are messages. So there's nothing that really, this says that it succeeds, but it doesn't really say anything about what's returned. So it's time for a new test, I think. Just a whole new test that's looking at the response, not the actual changes to the data, which It's fine. Okay, so I don't need assert exists anymore, right? But basically I want to check out this response string. And if I go to the update, article controller, there is the update method right here. This is returning something called article view. So article view model basically is what's being returned. So I want to, is that correct, first of all? Article view model, which itself is, okay, I don't think that's right. So I'm glad I've done this because I think what's supposed to be returned, if I go back here and look, it's this weird wrapper thing again. Yeah. So new and its article equals that sort of approach. Okay, which means, and I've done this elsewhere, apparently not in this controller, but I've done it elsewhere, somewhere like this. There's an extension method that I wrote, like subdoc or something. Yeah, and where did I use this? User controller, okay. Yeah, okay, so I must have skipped over here. Okay, yeah, something like this right here. I'll explain this in a second, but this is, what did I say it was? It was article view model. Yep. Article view model. Okay, so what I'm doing is right here, notice I'm wrapping this view. If I go and show you what that is. This contains slug, title, description, body, and of course we're missing one, haven't gotten there yet, but created that and so on. So those match all these here, and plus the author gets added in as well. But notice there's this article kind of wrapper around that object, which it's just been a frustrating part of Conduit, but it's the spec, so you got to do it. You know, there's a real world lesson there, right? Like, yeah, this is frustrating, but I mean, if we change it, we have to change 100 other projects, so it's the way it is. So that's why I have this new article equals wrapper there. But when I'm doing tests, notice that it's not actual class here. This is just an anonymous object. So what I've done is I've just created this little wrapper here I call subdoc, which will just kind of unwrap that wrapper in there, which makes things easier for me to test. So that's all we're doing here. So right now, I just need to make sure that what's being returned is what is expected to be put in. So for instance, we could say the body is equal to the article body that I'm sending in. Yep. And same thing with title. Article title. It's the same thing that's being passed in. This new slug here, I don't think I need that anymore because I'm not testing. I'm not looking at the database. I'm putting stuff in the database, but I'm really just looking at what's being returned. All right. Yes. So basically, article. Or I could look at payload. That might be a little bit. Payload.article might be a little bit more direct. I could imagine a future scenario where I have to modify the payload in between article and payload. So just do that. Title, body, description, and a description. Yep. What else is in there? Let's see. We got author. We got created at. This should not change. So I'm matching this. It's not in the payload. I don't send the date in the payload. So I'm just matching it to the article. What else? Tags, right? Tag list. I'll change this because it's a list, right? So all the tag list t dot contains wait, no, how does this work? Yeah, all of them are in new tags contains t, and that is true. Notice I can simplify this right here to just new tags contains. Whoa, no. I'm telling you I can't. I don't know why ReSharper isn't doing it for me, but just get rid of that. So just everything is contained in new tags. That's all it's saying there. What else? Description. Favorited. So no favoriteds changed. So again, that should equal to article dot favorited. That should not changed. Article dot favorited. Yeah, that's fine. And favorite account should not change. I'm not doing any favoriting here. Okay. So I suspect this should pass. Hey, Napalm Codes, good morning to you as well. Welcome to a Friday stream. I hope you're having a great day. What's new with Napalm Codes as these tests run? These are a little slower tests because they're spinning up a web server and interacting with the database. So take a little bit more time to run. And take a little more time to fail. Okay, favorited is not correct. That's interesting. Okay, I'm going to put that on hold because mostly I'm concerned with updated at 10 days out from vacation, doing a little side coding for Mr. Fritz. You are C# Fritz, I assume. What are you working on for C# Fritz? Okay, so that's passing. So what was the deal with the favoriting not being correct? Tags app. I don't know what Tags app is. You're going to have to educate me. So favorite, this is get response. There's no reason that should change. How about this one? Basically, a social media aggregator they can use for .NET Conference. I see. So you're working on stuff for .NET Conf, which is coming up here. When is that coming up? I don't think I think I maybe went to one .NET conference, but then it got to be where every conference was virtual for a while, and so I just got sick of going to them. It's November 14th through 16th. Here's on the page, right there. .NET Conf, November 14 to 16, and that's .NETconf.net. Yep, and they usually do, big announcements there and lots of .NET's, Microsoft-focused .NET stuff. All these breakpoints I have hanging out still. Okay, favorites count 32. 32. Why is it 32? Well, anyway, that's passing. Well, why is so many favorited so many times? But whatever. Okay. The long-awaited "Don't Call It Blazor" unified Blazor release. Oh, really? Is that what's going to happen? They're not calling it Blazor anymore? Or "Don't Call It Blazor Unified"? Well, Microsoft and their names, they're always doing stuff with names. It's one of the things they've always struggled with is naming things and renaming them and naming them based on something else that's not the same thing. Well, this is weird. Favorited true, but favorited false. That's real weird. Do I set favorited true by default for some reason? I do. Why do I do that? That's going to break some tests maybe, but there's no reason to that. But I don't understand why favorites count as 32. Is that also? Favorites count. Oh yeah, I just got a random number. Okay. Yeah, probably not. That's why it's 32, but probably shouldn't be doing that. Okay. So update, I'm changing the name of this test. Update returns the updated article. I mean, even just think about like Windows. The naming issues they've had with Windows, right? It was Windows 1, 2, 3, 3.1, 3.11. Which, you could keep going. But they decided to rebrand it to Windows 95. Put a year on it. Okay. Whatever. And then Windows 98. And then Windows gets a little murky because there's like Windows 2000 and there's Windows Millennium Edition. And yes, Azure used to be Windows Azure. Yep, I remember those days. They were still holding on to, hey, we're going to get some more Windows adoption here in the internet. But clearly no. It's more like Linux Azure at this point. Okay, so that's passing. Okay, so here is where I need to make a change probably, is the updated at. You blame Balmer. There's probably plenty of blame to go around. Okay, so actually the updated date, this is where it's tricky. So is greater than or equal to new date time offset. Whoa, new date time offset of datetime dot now minus time span 30 seconds. So this is my janky way of saying, hey, this was updated in the last 30 seconds. But notice there's no endpoint there, or no property there. It's just red. Date time offset. Probably you still blame Balmer. Linux is a cancer. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? Well, that's a competitor, right? So are you supposed to just now obviously in hindsight we can see that, yeah, you're supposed to just embrace it and submit your own Linux pull requests and stuff. But at the time, a traditional business model would be like, yeah, don't use our competitor. I mean, I can't blame him for that. That's the sort of thing that, you got to do to competitive reasons and stockholders and all that. I can't say I'm mad at him for that. Obviously, that's if you're invested in Linux, that's yeah, it's not very good tact. Absolutely, because what you're doing is you're saying to all the millions of people out there who are using Linux, you're dumb, right? So that's something you shouldn't have done, right? No, yeah, you're right about that, but you could have had more tact with it, I suppose. Okay, so I think this will also still fail because I'm not actually setting it, I don't think. I'm just being extra thorough here just to make sure I got everything working the way it should. Okay, yep, and it's 001, so it was not set clearly. So where is that set at? That's update handler, update article handler, right here. Okay. So this gets updated. Where is it updated? Right here. So it's doing the update. Okay. So, yeah. So I kind of put this off, but this should probably return the updated article, right? And if it's an exception, we're going to, it should not return update article. It should return, was it data service results? Update article. Yeah. Not update article, just article. Just a plain old data object. And so that is, of course, going to break the interface. Okay. Okay, whatever. And where are we? Update article. Yep. So exception would be we return a new whatever null, and the data results is, well, maybe a new one here. Failed to update. Add to this enumeration. Haven't done that in a while. Okay, otherwise, okay, so always update. So the updated at equals new datetime offset of datetime now. Yep. Updated at. And while I'm at it, the new article dot updated at equals updated at. I could probably shorten this a little bit, huh? All right. So, let me think about this. I don't really think that makes sense, because this article, I'm only expecting it to have, at most, title, slug, body, description, and tag list, and nothing else should be passed in. So does it make sense to return the whole thing here? It'd probably be involved with another get. So I don't think so. What I think I need to do is go back here. And it needs to be returned from here. Yeah? So article equals await articles data service get article by the slug, which is updated article dot slug. Data service result of article. Should I put that in there? Really, I'll just put article in there, I think. So article is like so. You know what? Now I'm thinking, no, it doesn't make sense there. Because I'm already doing another get, so I'd be doing twice as many gets for no reason. You go away. I'm already doing it from here. Get article request. Request, and that returns from the response. So why wouldn't this have it? Article updated at equals article updated at. Yeah, what was I thinking there? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, that's all I need to do. Update article handler. Don't need to worry about that at all. I mean, the data service is going to update the date, yes, but then I'm actually getting it back out here. And this is where I'm doing the mapping. So there we go. Okay, there we go. Pass. All right. Well, that's all done then. Let's go ahead and do a commit. Whoa. Hopefully nothing sensitive there. World. Okay. BioZal with a subscription. What's going on, Aaron? Great to see you. How are you feeling? Almost human again. Well, that's good to hear. Okay, just check my code here, see what I'm committing, because there is a lot of tests that I was working on since Tuesday, just kind of on my own time. Oh, I should probably run those tests. I should probably run everything again, because I did change that that's kind of helper class. So just run everything, make sure I didn't break anything. But while I'm doing this, I'm going to get that cup of coffee. This will take a second, so I will be right back. After these messages, we'll be right back. Told you I'd be right back. Thanks again to Shirley Dev for that video. I don't see why this would cause test to fail, but it might. So I just want to check before I commit anything. Hey, Shirley Dev, how are you? Ninja Speed. Yeah, the coffee machine's just right outside the room there, right over there. So the coffee was already made. They're just waiting for me to come and pour it. Today's mug is from that conference. They got another event coming up in Austin here in January, I believe. Speaking of conferences. You do the carafe? Yeah, I do, because I usually have 2 cups of coffee in the morning. I have a machine that has the little cups, the little Keurig K-cups or whatever. I can use that for the K-cups, and I can also, it's got one of those like K-cup size coffee filters you can just fill with grounds. So I have lots of options. When it gets closer to December, I will probably pick up, actually, Abomination, the K-cups are Abomination. I mean, I understand the reasoning why you wouldn't like K-cups, but let me tell you, Christmas time, there is a certain type of coffee you can only get, like I've only been able to get in those cups, and it is delicious. But that reminds me, it is almost time, since the C# Advent's starting up, it's almost time for me to start thinking about a coffee advent. Oh, weak flavor? Oh, I gotcha. Well, if you say so, I'm not hardcore coffee, at least not yet, so. It is time for me to look at these coffee advent covers. And what better time to do so while I'm waiting for these tests to pass? So this is what I think I did last year. The Keurig 24 count. This one looks interesting. And I want at least 24. 25 would be my preference, but 24 is good too. Jelly Belly. I don't want Jelly Belly. All right, so let's look at this one. Does it say what flavors are on there? Yeah, this looks very similar to what I had last year. Some of them are actually hot chocolate, not coffee. But there you go. But this one, what do we got here? 24 cats. Oh, look at this. Cinnamon roll, Christmas cookie, candy cane. This looks really good. Yeah, spiced eggnog. Yep, I like this one. This is the one I'm going to get, I think. Let me just send this to the wife and see what she thinks. try to get a different one each year. The first year I got one from Aldi, which was it was okay. There was one or two good flavors in there. The second one I got from Keurig, which has actually got some really good stuff, including the one that my favorite there is a Cinnabon cinnamon coffee, which I've tried other cinnamon coffees. I've tried to find Cinnabon grounds, but I can't. They're only in the cups, it seems like. So I don't want to stock my cabinet with, hundreds of Cinnabon K-cups. So I just forego it most of the year. Christmas time comes around, I'm getting those Cinnabon cups. I'm getting them. You forget about it. It's going to happen. All right, so I'm going to add this to my cart. Maybe a little early, but I mean, they got good shelf life, don't they? All right, well, hey, article tests are all passing, so maybe we're good. I don't expect the other ones to fail. Maybe those unit ones might fail. Let's see. But let's go back to my commit screen. Number 17. I don't know why I closed this in the first place. I added updated at to update slice. Update article slice. All right. So I did change this. The article helper. This is what I'm worried about because I went from 0 as a default, or random as a default, to 0 as a default. Doesn't seem to be a problem. Articles controller. Yep, I put a little wrapper on there, and that actually might be a problem here too with the get endpoint. I don't think I have a test for that yet. Get article response. This is just adding the updated at. The handler is, I reworded this from new article to updated article. It makes more sense to me. Update article response, just some cleanup. Data service. This is where I added the updated at using the timestamp from right now. View model, just added updated at there. A little cleanup. Data result status, I'm going to roll that back. I don't need that after all. At least not right now. For models, I added the updated at. Okay, then these are the tests that I've been working on. Kind of, off the stream. Update article handler test. These are all unit tests. You can see it's a huge amount of unit tests there. Covering a lot of the same stuff, but in a unit test way, a much faster run. It doesn't hit the database or anything. The DTO, I added a new helper for update article request helper, just a little minor one there. And then this is the integration for update article. Yep, which, wait. Yeah, that's what I was just working on. I thought it was in another file though. Oh, this is testing the data service directly. This is the data service test. So just a good set of tests all over to make sure everything's covered. And also to kind of show different examples of, here's a data service test, here's an integration test using the handlers, here's an integration test using the full thing, and then here's a unit test testing just individual parts. Is it too many tests? I don't think so. The only time will tell though, like in a real world project, changes will come along, and then you will learn like, is this test really worth it? Have to change this test, all these tests as well. So we'll see how it goes. There is still some changes to come for articles, so we might run into some issues with these tests, but I don't expect it to be a problem. Users is still going. So anybody got any fun plans for this weekend? Other than going back and watching my video on demand Twitch streams? Yeah, right. What I would recommend, though, if you're new to the stream, by the way, is I've got edited versions of these streams. Still way behind on those, but they're abridged versions that kind of show the important stuff in 15-minute chunks. You still can't hear out of your left ear. Oh gosh. So so maybe this is a weird thing to bring up on a coding stream, but I have an issue with just overall, I have excessive earwax. Yes, I'll admit it. I just huge buildups over a long period of time. So I've explored all kinds of different options to keep those clean. One of the ones I found the most useful is, of course, mineral oil. But the actual device I use to clean that out. You know those little bulbs that you use on babies to like clear their noses? You can fill that with water and do it in the shower. Get those ears blasted out. I'm not sure if that'll help you, Aaron, because you got a whole different, like, it's not just excessive earwax that's bothering you, it's other issues. But hey, all tests are pass. So commit. Yeah, ear infection. So that may not help, but just throwing it out there. Okay, so I'll go back to my thing here. We'll move this back over as finally done for reals this time. Now let's go to delete article. Now I'd entertained the idea of like a soft delete or archiving these. But there are some issues with that makes things more complex. I have to go back and change the get and the update to basically ignore those articles. So I'm just going to go with a full-on delete. There's really nothing that says in the spec I have to do one way or the other. So I'm just going to do a full-on real delete. And this way I can also demonstrate the delete operations in Couchbase as well. So I'm going to do that. This should be pretty simple. Let's go back to the articles controller. Okay, new endpoint. This is a delete endpoint, I assume, right? Yep. This requires authorization. Delete. You know, it occurs to me that these are all require authorization, but I'm not actually checking to see that this article belongs to you. And that's true with update as well. And the spec doesn't really mention it either. So as long as I'm logged in, I can edit anybody's article. It just now occurred to me this is a problem. So I'll have to go back and make changes to update article again. But let's get delete endpoints done here. You have one of those. Okay, we're going to earwax. Oh, okay. You have one of these. So I've got something similar to this as well. It sometimes helps, but I've not seen this design before. It's kind of wild. Interesting. I'll see it. Yeah, it's not even available right now. Anyway, this has been Earwax Talk here on Office Hours. Where's my spec? I think you accidentally sidetracked the stream. No, believe me, this happens all the time. Articles, API articles slug. API articles slug. And there we go. So, delete. All I need is a slug. Don't need anything else. Okay. So, maybe you all can suggest a better way to do this, but here's my thoughts. If something like this probably have to be another handler, right? But basically what I'm saying is if article belongs to user, if not article belongs to user, then return unauthorized. That's basically what I'm saying. It's not going to look like that, but I want to add this. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is a method. I don't know. I'm going to add this to update, delete, update and delete, basically. Update, delete. Yeah, there's only two. I need to worry about it. So does that make sense? Or is there another way of going about this that I haven't thought of? And no, this is just going to look at the article to check to see if the author matches the logged in user. That's all it's going to do there. Actually, it probably could make that part of the existing handlers. Make that part of the validation, perhaps. Or it could be part of the handler itself, either way. Right, so if I go to update article handler, I could, I'm getting the article here anyway, so I could also check to see, if current user matches author. If not, then this is unauthorized. Return unauthorized, basically. So, is that okay? It only applies to these two endpoints, to delete and update. So I'm thinking that's probably okay. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so all I need to do here is delete request equals new article delete request, just taking the slug. Delete response equals await mediator send delete request. There could be validation errors there, of course. If delete response, could it be validation errors? Yeah. Could be someone passed in a blank slug or something. Return unprocessable, yeah, same sort of thing here. Okay, otherwise return okay. Is this supposed to return the article itself? Delete article. Does not say. So I guess we're just going to return okay. Return okay, article deleted. Simple as that. Okay, so let's go over here to articles handlers. We're going to create article delete request, which is I request of article delete response. Should also create that one. Yep, and I'll have public class article delete handler, I request handler, article delete request, article delete response. Yep. Article delete response isn't really going to be anything except potentially validation errors, right? So, okay, article delete request needs a constructor, I believe, right? Yep. And it's going to be slug equals slug, not slugify. Slug equals slug. Slug. Don't need a private set or public set on that one. Yep. Okay, and here we go in the request. Validation. Need some things in the constructor here, so probably need article data service Yes. I validation. What is it? I can never remember the name of this class. Wait, no. I validator of article delete request. Yep. So we got that, and we got that, and there we go. Okie doke. So then the validator code look like this. This is probably something I could put into a base class somewhere. At some point, I don't know. Return article delete response, and it's just going to be validation errors. Okay. I suppose there'd be other possibilities as well, but I only think of one validation error. Okay, anyway. So now let's go ahead and do it. Await articles delete article, I guess, and request dot slug. Just leave it bool for now. Okay, inside of this, all we're doing is getting the articles collection, just like I'm doing here. Should be async. And then articles awaits articles collection dot remove. And it's not slug, it's gets article key. And then return true. Although data service result string. Let's do this. And put the slug and data result status okay. Okay, but it's possible this could fail because the slug doesn't exist or something, right? So I will do a catch of document not found exception. And if that is the case, return new, just call it, we can pass this slug there, that's fine, but not found. Need to change this. I'm returning the slug because why not? I don't think I'll ever use it, but it's totally fine to return that. So this is just going to be the result there. So I could say if result dot data result, no, dot status equals not found, then I could return new response where article not found equals true, which I don't have yet. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. Otherwise, we're good. So we return new whatever, and we're done. Not much going on there, although I do have to do the check to make sure that the person can delete this. Yeah. So the request needs to have more information. So the how did I do this? I got a helper, right? Auth service. What is it? Get all auth info. And yeah, just what I'm doing up here, all these claims. Okay. I really don't need to get all of them. I just need the username, right? But yeah, let's just, I think this is easier. So username equals claims dot username dot value. Yep. Okay, and so this needs to pass some username here as well. Yeah, let's do that. So then this has username equals username. Why is put at the bottom? I don't know. Just doesn't like me. Okay. So now that's being passed in. What doesn't it like here? Oh, it's not get response, it's delete response. What? Validation errors? Oh my goodness. Okay, back to the handler. So at this point, we can't, no, not update handler. Yeah. Whoa, it's Matt. Whoa, it's Dota 2 Attitude. What's going on, Dota 2 Attitude? A long time no see. Welcome back. Great to see you again. Here I am coding still. What are you up to these days? So I need to check here. Does article, you have vacay today, you also code things. Okay. Just call this allowed equals await. Does article belong to user? We could say is this the article author? I don't know what's a better way to phrase this, but what I have is slug and request slug and request.username. How is Couchbase? Couchbase is doing great. I don't know if you just saw the news. It's pretty cool. Something I've been using internally is Capella IQ. We got an ad starting in 3 minutes, so let me get this Couchbase ad out of the way before the Twitch ad happens. So Capella IQ. It's available in Couchbase Capella. It is a embedded LLM, conversational AI, built right into Couchbase, so you can do things like, hey, give me some test data that looks like this, or write me a SQL query that can do this, or write me some C# code that can do this. The kind of stuff I've been doing on this stream with ChatGPT, but it's built into Couchbase, so it knows about the structure of the data and the fields that are available, things like that. So it's going to be better at creating database-specific stuff like indexes and queries and test data right there in the UI. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of in a private preview right now. You can sign up to check it out. They're kind of slowly rolling it out, but they're still doing some private testing right now. But I've got to play with it. It's pretty cool. You generate a bunch of test data at work to do SQL performance explain plans more accurately. Did you do that with a ChatGPT sort of thing? Because I'm not sure I would necessarily need that. Well, use one of your internal APIs. Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. ChatGPT generating fake data. It's something it's gonna be really good at if you just tell it what to generate. So what you're saying, explain plans, but it seems like it's more along the lines of, well, I guess statistics factor into the explain plans, right? Like all the different cardinality. You want realistic cardinality in there is basically what you're saying. Bunch of covering indexes. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's something we're definitely going to be talking about, covering indexes here come maybe next week when I get to the list and feed articles. We'll be building a hardcore SQL query there. I've done SQL so far in this stream, but it's been very, very simple. Your understanding is explain plans are dependent on the data. I think that's true. I'm not sure if you're using Couchbase or not, but I think that's true in general, as long as you have a cost-based optimizer, because otherwise it's going to go based on rules, and it's not going to look at the data for those rules. It's not going to look at statistics for that. So you're on Azure, not Couchbase there. We've got an ad starting in about 10 seconds. So we're using Azure SQL, I assume. And I know SQL Server has a cost-based optimizer, so an explain plan probably would vary based on the data. We'll see after the ad break. Yeah, SQL Server under the hood, essentially. Yeah, Azure SQL. I've used that before. Actually, I think I still use that with my ancient custom blog engine for cross-cutting concerns. Napalm is free of ads. Haha. No ad breaks here. Also free of ads. Wow, you all. Carry on. Wait, yeah, I'm going to carry on. It's just I'm not going to sit here and wait for the ad break to end. But yeah, you guys are all shelling out. I know Biozal is a subscriber. I think Napalm buys the Twitch Turbo or whatever. Dota, are you a Turbo user as well? I don't think you're a subscriber. Anyway, uh, is the article is this the article author? So that's the name of my method. What do you all think about that method? You don't know why you don't have ads. Well, all I'm going on is based on what Streamlabs is telling me, so it may not actually exist. You're both Turbo and a sub. Look at you. Well, now it says the ad break is in progress. 3 minutes to go. So is there a better name for this method? Is this the article author? Now you have ads. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to go with that for now. The name can be changed, but basically what I'm going to be doing, and I can just use subdocument for this again, is I just want to make sure that this article belongs to the person trying to delete it. I don't want to allow you to delete other people's articles. Check article author. I like that one. Well, one thing with bulls is I like to start them with is or are, something like that. Check article author is good, but it doesn't imply a Boolean to me. So it'd be like is check article author or are check article author. Dota doesn't like the check. Does true mean the author is for the article? Yes. Yes. True means this article belongs to the author. Is article author? What about all the this? Is this the napalm? Is article author? I need all that extra language in there. You know, this is typical of me. Is like I'm reviewing tech books for like the last month or so, and one of the things I keep is that the article author. This is like a Jeff Goldblum style code. It's not JavaScript. You don't need this everywhere. But one of the things I keep doing with these books I'm reviewing, is I keep like saying, omit this. It's too wordy. Get rid of this. And then I go and make it wordy myself. So this is why it's important to have reviewers and people like you who are participating is, hey, Matt, that's excessive. Get rid of that. Sometimes it's hard to see that in the stuff you're working on yourself. So thank you for that. I think is article author makes sense to me. Is the article you're looking for. That'd be hilarious. We can have ChatGPT rename all these methods to have more of a Star Wars flair. Do you use any database management views? What do you mean by management views? Do you just mean like views in general? I'm not sure what a management view would be. You'd buy that feature? That'd be worth it to you to buy ChatGPT? Well, if you mean views, like database views, which you basically just take a query. Oh, okay. You can go in and see the worst queries. Oh, yeah. So those are like, what do we call those in Couchbase? We call them system key spaces, I think. Yeah, it shows like I don't know what it's called, but it's like the slow-moving query list, right? The worst queries that are running, right? Yeah, absolutely. I generally, so that's more like a DBA type of feature, I guess, although I could see value for developers there. The problem is when I'm working on a database just by myself or even with a larger team, it's nowhere near the type of, it's not approaching the real world type of database load. So I couldn't really look at those and be like, oh, that's a slow query, we should refactor it, because I don't have that information yet. So I have to go and do like a load test to get that kind of information, which is something we might do with this project here once it's done, is put under some sort of load test for benchmarking purposes or comparison purposes or whatever. But yeah, those things exist in Couchbase as well. I can't remember the names of them. I don't use them every day, but they do exist. AdventureWorks. AdventureWorks is funny because that's a SQL Server sample database, which is actually pretty complex, maybe overly complex, I would argue. The DB Maker is creating an example DB. Yeah, it's almost like a kitchen sink example database, which is why I decided to use that when I was working on my tool, SQL Server to Couchbase, which is a tool that kind of copies and potentially remodels data from SQL Server to Couchbase. AdventureWorks was a good project for that because it contains so much complicated relationships and data types and things. I was like, this is a good one to test with. They got to show off schemas and show off different data types and all that kind of stuff. Probably some, I don't know if there's triggers and stuff in there, but yeah, they made it as a kitchen sink example, and that's fine for that purpose. But to actually use it as a guideline to design a schema, lots of decisions I question in there. But you've heard triggers are bad. I would argue triggers are bad until you absolutely need one. Because triggers lock your table, and that can cause issues, especially if you have multiple triggers that are kind of triggering off each other. You could end up in deadlock. It also just slows things down in general. But coming from a SQL Server background, I worked on a very complex, large schema project, probably more complex than AdventureWorks. And in some situations, a trigger was the right tool. So for instance, this is kind of how I got into NoSQL actually, we were using Elasticsearch as a search tool for certain parts of the system. And we wanted the search data to be updated kind of in real time. So we created a trigger. So when a new record was added to a table, it triggered. It didn't do the work itself. It triggered back to the system, I think, the web system, or something like that, to then put that record into Elasticsearch. So, yes, a lot of people don't use anything except DBO for their schema, right? And that's okay. That's fine, as long as you understand that it's out there as an option. I used to work for a university, and we didn't really understand. We hadn't even had schemas back then, but we didn't understand schemas, so we had everything. We didn't understand databases. We had everything in one single database. So we had a rec sports site. Every table was rec sports _users, rec sports _events. And then the next website would be housing _users, housing _events. We didn't use, we should have used schemas for that, or different databases, but we didn't. We put them all in one place. Just like cursors are fine. Again, cursors are in the same bucket for me. Really bad unless you actually need them, right? But generally speaking, I think you can, a lot of the stuff I've seen cursors for in the past, you could turn it into a CTE, for instance. And you stay away from the cursors, right? But sometimes you need them. Especially if it's like you're creating a sprock that's not intended to run from a website. It's like just a DBA sprock or maintenance sprock or something like that. Totally fine to put cursors in there. No problem at all. Because it's not like your user is going to be triggering those cursors over and over again. It's just going to be some maintenance or some sort of back-end type task. But yeah, if you can, I would say avoid them as much as possible unless you actually need them. Which is true of any tool, really. Any piece of syntax, any code. Don't use it until you need to use it. Which is what I'm doing here with this Conduit project is I'm sticking to the key value API as much as possible because it's so much faster and more efficient than using a SQL query or a text search query or anything like that. But I do need SQL queries at some point. And I'll need indexes and all that kind of stuff. I'll use them when I need them. Until then, we'll stick with the key value. The actual design of the database is difficult to work my head around. The only way to get better at that seems to gain experience. This is something I'm not trying to brag here, but I've never really had trouble with. And I think it's because one of the most valuable courses, perhaps the only valuable course in college, that the most valuable in terms of practical use, was a relational database design course, where this professor just drilled, you know, normal form and schema and foreign key, just drilled it into us. The homework and the exams, we didn't have Oracle. We were using Oracle, but we didn't have Oracle to use, like at our homes or anything. So the tests and the exams were, we'd go into her office and she would give us instructions like, okay, create a table with this such and such. And we had to get that exactly right. If we made a typo or mistake, that would be points off. So we got very good at it. Normal form stuff, Dota 2, you're probably using that even if you don't realize it. Yeah. No, she wasn't a monotone professor. I did have some of those for calculus, and actually I grew to very much appreciate that professor once I got past his really thick accent. I thought he was a really good teacher. Best calculus teacher I had, even though he was very, very dry. Not unpleasant, but just completely uninteresting as a person. But his calculus instruction was incredible. I learned more in that 1/4 of calculus than the first 3 I had combined. You're never fourth normal. Yeah, fourth normal form might be too much, right? Never first. Yeah, probably stay away from first, especially in relational databases. One of the things with Couchbase is that oftentimes first normal form or even non-first normal form is beneficial and valuable. Data structure is a little different, I think, than database, modeling and schema. Data structures to me is like, queues and lists and maps and linked lists and all that kind of stuff, which is not completely useless for understanding databases. But TBD Gamer, what's going on? Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. It's getting kind of busy in here. This chat is really scrolling, so I am glad to see you all here on a Friday. Hope you're all having a great day. You had an Asian calculus teacher who's really good at calculus teaching. It all boils down to 3 things: read, write, compute. Yeah, my teacher was, didn't take time to know him that well, but he was Asian in the sense of like the subcontinent area. So I don't remember if he was Indian or Pakistani or could be Bangladeshi or somewhere in that region, right? So the accent was really, really tough for me. For like the first 2 or 3 weeks. But after that, I got used to it, and it was like, okay, this is great. It was a lot of matrix stuff in Calculus 4. And, even back in those days, the software was just not generally available and not very good. So matrices is really, really just boring stuff. But you got to get through it. It's a lot of work. A 3x4 matrix is just a lot of work to get through if you're multiplying matrices and all that kind of stuff. So it was great. Dota 2 is having fun at work. That's always nice. That's always nice. When you love what you do, the day just goes right on by. Accents are hard. Yes, they are. But I was fortunate to be in that professor's class that helped me a lot later in my career. Not the same accent, but I worked with. At the university I mentioned, there were people from India and different regions of India. They have different accents, right? So that, I'm not saying I became an expert in them, but it kind of helped me adapt to what they were saying a little better. Your manager posted a meme in Discord. First time you've been in an environment where happy enough to meme. Oh gosh, if that's an indication of like morale, then good heavens. Our Slack, we don't use Discord. Well, we do, but internally we use Slack, and it's just all kinds of memes all the time. So that's a good indication, I guess. Dota 2, are you just working on playing Dota 2? Please tell me you aren't playing Meepo. All right, well, this is a whole different conversation. Let me get back to coding here. You guys can talk Dota. I'm going to get back to this. So this is going to be a situation where I'm selecting a whole article. I'm only interested in one bit of that article, though. So I can use a subdocument API for this. So I'm going to say, I haven't done this subdocument read yet. I've done only mutating. No. Articles collection. Lookup in, and the key is not slug, but it is get article key from that slug. And the spec for this will be get, I guess. And the path is author username. This needs to be lowercase a. Okay, and so that's that. So that's looking up just that part of the document, just the author username. DOTA stands for, what does DOTA stand for? See if I can remember this. DOTA. Totally blanking. 15 years. It's that old of a game, huh? My gosh, I'm so old. Gosh, I'm so old. Let me finish this method, then I got to get a refill of coffee. Okay, result. Defense is the first word. Defense. Is it content as string? Index. Okay, I'm going to look at the documentation for this because I don't remember how this works. Docs Couchbase. Lookup in. That's going to be .NET SDK. Subdocument. Here we go. Okay, lookup in. So this is getting address.delivery.country. Looking for this one right here. Content as string. Okay. So it just kind of puts it, each spec goes into its own, it's like an array. So this is a content array. So that's easy enough. Okay. So I was on the right track. Okay. So then I can just return username equals author username. Easy enough. Time to write a test for this though, because this needs to have its own test, I think. Articles. This is in the data service. No, that's not the test. Where am I? Here we go. Articles, services, data service, and we'll create a test. Is article author tests? Tests? Yes, tests. Why not? This is a Couchbase integration test. Put test fixture on here. You know, actually, I was reviewing one of those tech books yesterday, and it didn't really state this explicitly, but it kind of implied that I don't need test fixture on here. And I think that's probably true. So what the heck is the point of test fixture as an attribute? Is it just kind of vestigial? Is it just like a useful piece of docs? I'm using NUnit, by the way. So yeah, I don't know. That's chime in on that. Let me know what that's all about. So we got the article test. I'm going to kind of steal some of this code here. I don't know if I need all of that. Use the word fixture to represent data that goes in the database. Okay, so that's with if I remember correctly, Dota, are you using PHP? Or Ruby? What is the integration test part doing? Okay. This is a base class for my tests. Oh, you're in C#. Okay. So what framework is the word fixture coming from for data in the database? But this is a base class. What it does for integration tests is it connects to Couchbase, wherever that is. It could be local, could be Capella. Make sure I can connect to it. Make sure that there's a bucket there, which matches the bucket name. And then it runs these migrations to make sure all the correct collections and scopes are in there. Yes, this uses a real database instance. That's what makes an integration test. I'm actually testing all the way down to the database here. This creates some DI stuff as well. So this is just the basic setup I need to start writing tests against a real database. So yes, this is using a real database. And then what I'm doing here is, okay, because not every integration test needs every collection provider. It probably wouldn't hurt to put all this stuff in the base class, but I just want the articles collection provider, and I need a favorites collection provider in order to create the article data service. So that's why I'm doing all that. So now it's time to write a test, which is hard to see down there, isn't it? Basically, returns true if author matches given username. Okay, and returns false if it doesn't. You haven't tried using real database instance, requires a lot of pipeline work. I would think it did. It is annoying to have to go through all that kind of setup, but I think it's definitely worth it. There's only so much I can do with unit tests. Faking out the enumerable query layer, SQLite in memory, entity framework in memory. Yeah, this is a technique I've seen using SQLite in place of a real SQL server with entity framework. However, I have concerns with that approach because SQLite is not the same as SQL Server. There's a lot of weird stuff that SQLite does that SQL Server doesn't, and vice versa. So my concern would be that I would run into that situation, and then I would have failing tests, but the code works fine, or passing tests, but the code fails. So to me, it's not quite an abstraction, right? But it's kind of a not exact substitute. So that's why I'd prefer using an actual copy of SQL Server. It is easier, yes, because you can just spin up memory and throw it away. But that's fantastic, and I wish there was something like that for Couchbase. There is Couchbase Lite, but Couchbase Lite is not the same thing as Couchbase Server. Not even like way different APIs and things, so it just wouldn't work. Both test groups will be equally easy to write, though. I'm a little confused by that question. The test groups being which? The SQLite and the real test groups? Yeah, right. CBL is SQLite behind the scenes, yes. But, I mean, that doesn't really help me when it comes to writing tests that use Couchbase Server, for instance, Aaron. So, real database or some kind of fake. They're not equally easy. No, I don't think so. Once you actually write the tests, once you've actually got the integration stuff set up, yes, they become about the same difficulty to write. But getting that, what you're talking about, pipeline stuff and configurations and, all that stuff in place, the build up, the cleanup, all that kind of stuff, that's a lot of work to do, and it's hard to get right. But once you have it right, I'm not saying I completely do, but I think I'm in a good place right now, then the actual tests are the same difficulty, I believe, to write. So, real database versus in-memory versus fake. Yeah, of course, the other choice is don't even use the database at all, just all unit tests, which I've seen before as well. Don't even test the real system, which has risks of its own when you're just mocking out the whole database system. So, okay, so we've got this data service. We also need to maybe consider what happens if that article doesn't exist. What should we do if an article doesn't exist? Return false? Article doesn't exist. That's probably a pretty weird edge case. Entity framework with unit of work pattern versus context or straight to SQL. Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Like with entity framework, generally speaking, you're using the entity framework objects, the entities, obviously, to work with the data. But what if you have to drop out to SQL for some complex query, something that entity framework can't do, which most of the time, it can, but again, from experience, maybe 20% of the time, entity framework can't do what you want, or it does it in such a lousy, inefficient way. You don't want to do it that way. So you have to drop down to raw SQL, which is fine. Entity framework supports that, as I think it still does. But then now, if you're using SQLite, raw SQL is not going to be the same thing, right? SQL Server versus SQLite. They're very similar languages, but they're not the same. You don't use T-SQL in SQLite. So if I'm doing a paging query, for instance, with SQLite, it's limit and offset. Easy. With SQL Server, it's rows and top and all that kind of stuff. Totally different syntax. So how do you do tests with that? So again, that's kind of an example of leaky abstraction problem there. So with raw SQL, you go to the queryable pattern. Okay, so on that point now, you're completely faking out the database, and it's not touching your real database, I think, is what you're getting at there. Yeah. Aaron says, entity framework for me is just like OData. It's overhead and adds so much to something that unless you need it, I don't believe is needed. That's kind of a tautology, but yeah, I agree. Back to what we were saying earlier about tools. You want to avoid them until you need them, right? Entity framework, one of the issues it solves, or tries to solve though, Aaron, is the impedance mismatch. And we're so into NoSQL these days that impedance mismatch is something we don't even think about anymore. But that is a problem, a drawback of using relational databases. You have to deal with impedance mismatch. And you might just say, oh, I'll just use Dapper and go right to SQL. Okay, yeah, but sometimes, again, I've been at an organization where the schema is very, very complex. Multiple relationships, multiple layers, and using raw SQL for that is extremely time consuming. So the entities make that a whole lot easier. You don't know how to test raw SQL very well. Well, that's kind of what I'm saying is use the real database. Use the one you're actually going to deploy to. Yeah. Dapper is more complex to train people on it. I would argue Dapper is, as long as we're talking about the same Dapper, is very, very simple, but all you have to train people on is SQL itself. And you have to train people on Entity Framework as well. I would argue Entity Framework's way more complex than Dapper. Anyway, that reminds me. There's a project I kind of want to try now that we have ChatGPT. This is something I looked at 2-3 years ago or something. Is Dapper for Couchbase, because Couchbase has SQL. Dapper just uses raw SQL. Why not combine them? The problem is that Dapper has a dependency on IDB connection, which is like an ADO.NET object, and there is no ADO.NET implementation for Couchbase. The actual interface is not that crazy to implement. I tried it once and I ran into some walls. I wasn't quite sure how to proceed. So I'm thinking about trying that with ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, see how far I can get in creating an IDB connection implementation, DB connection implementation for Couchbase. I don't know if it'll work or not, but it's worth a try. Anyway, that's a future project. Okay. Returns true if user matches. So what I need to do first is create a user. I need a user collection provider, Conduit, and this will be down here. Whoop, hello. Okay, and user collection provider goes off users. You've run into problems with the underlying layers depending on the dependencies. You're talking about with Dapper or just in general? And the reason I'm doing this is I want to create a user in the database. Either wrap it with an interface or extend the class, which is gross. Which part? The extending class or the interface? Article. Create article in database, but I want to specifically use that username, user.username. In general, especially old versions of EF. So are you on EF Core or are you on like old EF? Okay. So now I just want to test, like, is this user the author? And it should be no problem. Is article author of the, why is it request? Yeah, change this to slug. Username. You have both. Wow. I haven't used classic EF in long time. I haven't used EF, frankly, that much either. You're going to try to link how to add an item to a mock DB set using mock. Ah, interesting. Using mock to do it. So I remember, I didn't do this, but I worked on a project where I was writing tests and I was using mock to do it. And I think my coworker had never seen mock before. he was like, dang, that's cool. And this is a weird project, by the way. So he actually brought in mock to, to the project itself, not the test project, but into the project itself to accomplish some weird stuff. Because he didn't know that Castle existed, dynamic proxy existed. So he's essentially using mock as a way to use dynamic proxy. It was pretty wild. You do not like mock. Is this because of the whole recent drama? I'm still using mock in this project. FYI. Just what I decided to use. It's a popular one. I've used it a lot. There are other good mocking frameworks out there. I don't have a problem with mock. Oh, you had no idea there was recent drama. Okay, well, you just don't like mock on the principle of how it works. Well, that's a much better way to approach it than all the recent drama. All right, article.slug and user.username. And this should be true. This should match. Don't like Mockito or mock, etc., etc. You don't like mocking in general? Is there a mock framework you do like? I've not heard of Mockito before. That's a pretty cool name. Did I get my coffee yet? I told you I was going to get my coffee and I forgot all about it. So, I'll be right back in like less than 30 seconds. After these messages, we'll be right back. Yeah, it's definitely worth reading up on it now that it's kind of diffused. But I think we had a discussion on the stream before. But yeah, it's all hinged around the problem with open source funding in general. So yeah, it definitely is a thought. I think I actually came up with I don't know if it's a solution, but a hypothesis for a solution to the whole open source funding thing. If you're interested, I can tell you about my thoughts. But yeah, it's definitely worth reading up on. But if it were me, I wouldn't. Once you read on this, don't sour on mock because of that specifically. But if you don't like mocking in general, I understand that. There are people who are not into it. You want to hear my thoughts? Okay. So here's my thoughts. The problem is, like with mock or open source language of your choice, pick one. Open source project of your choice. Whatever it may be, whether it's active. What was the other one that just went closed source? What am I thinking of? I can't remember. But whether it's NUnit or mock or whatever it is, all right? So people put tons of their own time into these projects. All right, databases are sometimes open source. Yeah, I think the most pure open source database now is Postgres. Right, that's the one that has the, it's not really like completely taken over by a certain company or mostly from a certain company. But yeah, databases are sometimes open source. Couchbase, parts of it are BSL. A lot of it's BSL if you consider that open source. The same is true for Redis and Mongo and everything else. They're not open source with a capital O and S. But let's just say you have a library, capital O, capital S, open source, MIT, Apache, whatever. All right, and you spend 20 hours, 30 hours a week fixing bugs, addressing issues, making new versions, etc. Whatever the project is, okay? And you put out a shingle and said, hey, donations would be appreciated to make up for this time that I'm spending on this. Or perhaps I want to make this my full-time job, is working on this library, supporting it, answering questions, fixing bugs, etc. But that doesn't really work. I can't think of many open source projects where there are enough donations to really support the time being poured into those projects. And that's really what the mock guy was trying to say when he did what he did, is that, hey, don't forget, I'm putting in all this time, maybe throw me a few bucks. But of course, then the paying support is one method. Yeah, it's true, but I haven't really seen that be very successful either. People point to Red Hat as a positive example of that, but Red Hat got acquired by IBM. Yeah, and Mock, it's not really available to Mock either, because it's a testing tool, right? So, but generally speaking, open source funding is not going well. You can, if you can think of an example that proves this otherwise, that's fine, but it's probably an exception to the rule. Open source funding not going well. Some people are not into it for the funding; they're just into it for the fun, and that's fine. But I don't have the privilege of being a founder of a popular open source project myself. But what I've heard is that it eventually becomes not fun, having to deal with all the issues and pull requests and everything like that. So it's work. It turns into work. So my thought was this, all right? It's not really the developers who you want to go after for funds, for licenses and things like that, right? But they're the ones that make the decisions about which libraries to use, which libraries not to use, and so on. Clout, yeah, right now, Clout is probably the biggest benefit, but you can't really pay your mortgage with Clout. So my thought was this. The developers have the control over what libraries to use, when to use them. But the ones benefiting from those libraries isn't necessarily the developers directly, right? It's the software they're building for whatever their employer. That's where the money's made. And so you have a mismatch here. It's kind of it's a situation where the people making the decisions are not the ones. I'm not sure how to phrase this, but people making the money and the people building the tools, there's a gap between them, and that gap is developers who don't have a budget to spend on these tools. And even if they did, that budget would mean that I have to go through purchasing, I have to go through all this red tape. So I'm just going to avoid those libraries that I have to pay an extra fee for. So here's my thought. I think developers want these projects to be successful. They want the maintainers to be able to make a living doing these things. They want those. And I think employers benefit from those libraries essentially being free in terms of money, free as in beer. So why don't we do this? To solve this mismatch here, we give the developers some money every year as part of their employment, a benefit, whatever that amount is, $100 a year, $200, whatever, $1,000 a year, whatever, part of their payroll. But what they don't get that money directly. The developers then have to say, which open source projects do I want to contribute to? I want to send 50% to Mock. I want to send 50% to Mediator, whatever. So then the employer handles that benefit, and they're the ones sending the money to these projects. The developer decides, the employer has the money, and they send the money out there. So it's kind of like a health insurance situation where the employee is paying for part of it, yes, but the employer is paying a lot of the health insurance, sending it to the health insurance company. Why can't we have a benefit where the employer also sends some amount of money contribution to open source projects? So it's not licensing. No, it's still donations, but it's just the employers themselves are sending the donations based on the guidance of the developer. The developer can't keep that money. They have to donate it someplace. And, if this caught on, then you could have hundreds of thousands of developers sending funds to projects that they benefit from. Licensing is another option. Yes, that also works. It's not open source, no. And so licensing is successful. That's been successful. The issue in my mind with licensing, though, is it's somewhat hostile to developers in that I can't use it unless I pay for it. So there, as long as there is free versions and things like that, but now we're kind of back to the same situation where it's a free as in beer. I'm benefiting from it, even though I'm not paying for a license, right? So it's kind of a similar problem. Yeah, for commercial production, sure, but as a developer, if I want to learn a tool, do I have to have a customer first to actually start using that tool? What if I want to learn it on my own, or do some side work on my own, or go into like some sort of production environment on my own that's not commercial? How does that work? So that's kind of, but I mean that the commercial licensing, that's been successful. There is some benefit there, but let's just go back to mock. If this guy says, okay, it's closed source now, it's a commercial library, what do you think is going to happen to mock adoption? Like overnight, developers will switch in droves to a non-commercial open source version, a mocking library. They will abandon it because they do not want to pay for it. That's what's going to happen. So to do a side project is free, but if it's in a project that makes millions in revenue, it's not free. All right, so then how do you enforce that, Dota? Now you have to have all kinds of lawyers and auditing and all kinds of stuff to do that. So, but I mean, that's what Oracle does, essentially. Yeah, they look for an alternative in a second. If it's something like mock, yeah. They're not going to want to pay a commercial license. Some people will. Is it enough to keep mock alive? Probably not. Okay, so TBD Gamer, I was reading a comment on a video yesterday. A game company employee said that their company gave them $300 a year to buy games from other publishers. It was in their interest that employees got access to other games. It's very similar. That is a great idea. It is in their employees' in their interest because they know what else is out there. They can see other stuff going on, right? And if I'm not going to buy a game if I don't like it, just for the purpose of research. But if my employer is paying for it, yeah. If I'm working on a first-person shooter, then if you're paying for me to download Call of Duty to research it and see what they're doing, absolutely. People hate Oracle for it. Yes, Dotsu, you're right. They hate Oracle, but Oracle is making bazillions of dollars, so clearly they're doing that right. The problem is when everyone else thinks they're Oracle and thinks they can do the same thing, they're not Oracle. You can't behave like that because you're not Oracle. You're not, you've not been embedded in the software world since the late 70s. So you can't act like you have been. So how does that help with anybody else? So anyway, that's my thought. I thought it'd be a pretty cool thing if employers started to give developers an open source contribution benefit, even if it's a small amount, even if it's a match. Like we will give a dollar for dollar match up to $100. Like, even that would be a good step in the right direction, I think. But anyway, I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I think that was a pretty cool idea. Did this test pass? Yes, okay. So now I want to do... dev association would be a neat way to spread something like that. Dev associations are more company agnostic. What do you mean by dev association? That's a term I've not heard of before. So this is going to be a different user. I don't even care. I don't even need to create a user for this. So it's just going to be some random username. A PEI devs where I am, for example. Okay, what's PEI devs? I need a random. Oh, this is have like a .NET association. Okay, so like we have a .NET meetup here in Columbus, for instance. Is that what you're talking about? Just a bunch of developers that meet monthly. Yeah, okay. And what would that? How would that help with that? I'm not seeing the connection yet. Because again, the issue there is the developer spending their own money on it, which we know empirically they don't do. Now I have, but only small amounts every once in a while. If Couchbase gave me a benefit, it's like, hey Matt, we need to spend $100 on donating to open source projects, I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then I might even spend more of my own money to do that, to tell them the idea through that, just the way they get the word. Oh, okay, so you're just saying to spread the word. Yeah. Well, maybe. I really think it needs to be more of a, not the developers themselves. I think they'd be on board, right? Just having to decide where to send money. I think that would be great. But the overhead and managing and the additional costs, tax incentives, yeah, that might help the companies. Like these are nonprofits you're donating to. Yeah, so you get a tax benefit, but is that worth the overhead cost of managing it? So I think a company would have to buy into it. There may be companies that already do this, for all I know. It's just it needs to spread more in the industry and be thought of as a benefit that it's desirable for developers. If you had two different jobs you're applying for, they're exactly the same except one gives you a open source benefit, I'd go to that one. Yeah. Of course, not everything is always exactly the same, but okay, article doesn't exist. I'm not even going to hit the database now. I'm just going to make up an article slug. Plus slug service. Ugh. Slug service dot bang GitHub. 10, that's fine. That's a real looking slug. Okay, so this should throw an exception because the article doesn't exist, right? How do you test for well, no, I don't want it to I want it to swallow the exception. Return it false. But this should throw an exception right here. Yep, okay. Not found, so back to, is this real ASP.NET Couchbase? Yes it is. I think I showed that up here, maybe not. I can definitely put the link in the chat. Real world ASP.NET Couchbase. There it is. So you can see all the gory details of it there. Some past video clips if you want to get caught up. I need to update this table here. But there's the full streams playlist. There's the edited streams playlist, which is not much right there now. But there you go. If you want to get caught up, you can watch those on 2x speed or whatever. In fact, there's even a way to hack YouTube, to get like higher than 2x speed, like 3x speed, 4x speed, whatever. You can go crazy if you really want to burn through those old streams. Okay, so this I want to, wait, where's my, if it doesn't exist, just try this. Do that whole thing, but I want to catch document not found. Is it document not found? Document not found exception, yeah. So in this case, return false. Okay, now this test should pass. And so, Dota, I welcome any sort of contributions or comments or issues, or if you're just going to give it a try. I would love to get some real feedback on someone trying to get it up and running, see if I can improve the documentation or anything else I can improve. Because that's the whole point of this, is to make it as easy as possible for someone to get up and running with this so they can start learning about, in that case, Couchbase, but also ASP.NET and everything else. So, okay, so that method is tested and working. Let's go back to this request. So if it's not allowed, return new response, and this is going to be a, maybe I'll try to get up and running. Contributing is a big task, a big ask. Well, so when I say contributing, all I'm implying by that is you could just leave an issue that says, hey, this part was confusing to me. This didn't work. That is a contribution. Or hey, there's a typo in the documentation. That's a contribution. You don't have to send some big fancy pull request to be a contributor. Not in my eyes. It's simple. I'm not one of those big open source library contributors where I dread pull requests and issues. I'm not there yet. So I actually celebrate them, and I get really happy when someone creates an issue or a comment or pull request in one of my projects. It makes me very happy. So I'm not too jaded or overworked yet on those open source projects. So there's actually another project I'm working on called NoSQL Migrator, which is what I'm using for migrations I showed earlier in this project. It's like Fluent Migrator, but it's for Couchbase. And I've actually gotten multiple contributions on that project. They're minor, they're not huge things, but to me, they're huge because it kind of validates that, hey, someone's out there paying attention, someone's actually looking at this project. So that always makes me happy when I see any contribution to a project other than my own. It makes me very happy. So even if it's an issue saying, hey, this sucks, fix this, that makes me happy to see that. So, all right. This should be is unauthorized. True. So I'm adding another property to this. Hey, this sucks, fix this. Well, as long as you, yeah, it's definitely Balmer level tact. But again, I'm at the point where that's fine. That's useful feedback for me. If someone is actually looking in my code enough to say, hey, this part is not so good, that makes me happy. So maybe you don't have to phrase it so rudely, but if you want to, that's fine. I don't care. It helps me improve it. That's all that matters. Okay, so this is just checking. Make sure only the author can delete their article. Okay, so I'm actually doing the deleting here. Try deleting. And then if everything else succeeds, then we just return essentially full default. No validation errors. Article not found is false. Is authorized false. We're all good there. Okay, so I'm going to test for those here. If delete response dot unauthorized, and we return what is unauthorized. You're not allowed to delete that article. You're not allowed to delete that article. Okay, and what was the other one? If delete response dot article not found, return not found. Article not found. Okay, so this is how I like my actions to look. Basically, very thin bit of code to actually go and send all the work somewhere else, and then we're just acting on the response that only can be done at the web level. So, not authorized, not found, validation errors. Otherwise, okay, article deleted. This is a very, very nice looking action in my eyes right now. I like it. Okay. Okay, so I think that's done. Right, because this actually will delete. Yes. Yep, okay. So I'm going to remove these into their own files. Then we'll write a controller test. And by we, I mean me. Unless someone wants to kind of jump on and pair a program, and we can do it. But yeah, I'll move those into their own files. So back into handlers. Got article handler, request, response. Oh, I don't have a validator yet. I'll create that right here. Public class article delete request validator. I have validator of article delete request. Whoa, whoa. No, not iValidator, abstract validator. That does a lot more work for us. Okay. Constructor. This will be a very, very simple one. Not much going on here. Whoa. Rule 4. X dot slug is not empty. You may offer to pair programs. Still looking through this code, though. And we don't have to do it today. We can do it another time as well. I'm not really set up for that unless you have, unless we both have, and I haven't done this in a while, the, what's the Visual Studio Code Collaborator tool? Article slug is required. When do you stream? My Tuesday mornings and Tuesday mornings and Friday mornings, 9 to 12 every week when I can. I didn't make this a cascade to stop. Use JetBrains. I don't have that tool. Well, I also have JetBrains Writer. I don't know if they have something similar to collaborate. If not, we can just do a Zoom call, that sort of thing. Have we done that before, Dota? Or is it somebody else that I paired with on this various channel with some Ruby? It's been a while. X.username. I think Writer has collaboration tools. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Cascade mode. I'll stop. I just haven't used them. I think you watched me bike shed once. Were you working on something with Ruby? I remember working on something with Ruby. It was Couchbase in Ruby, I believe. Not empty. With message. I don't see why this would ever happen, but author username is required. It's not equal, should be not empty. We got an ad break starting in 3 minutes. So yeah, it was Ruby. So Dota, you're working on C# now, you're working on Ruby then. You got quite a lot of stuff going on. Anybody want to do my job today and I can play with .NET and Flutter? This code base I'm in. Ugh. What's wrong with your code base, TBD Gamer? What are you working on? And if you're working with Flutter, I think you might want to check out, by the way, BioZal's channel. I think he may be doing some, maybe not right now, but follow BioZal. He does a lot of mobile stuff. But I think Flutter is one of the things he's working with or plans to work with. Definitely check him out. You got one table, 4 different concepts, uses tri-state boolean. The good old nullable boolean. Oh, it's not nullable. It's hey, a subscription from Mini-Weights. What's going on, Mini-Weights? Happy Friday. Great to see you in here. Just be a Chad like me and use JavaScript and Python. How do you feel about TypeScript, Mini-Weights? That's the controversy of the week right now. TypeScript versus JavaScript. Deletes is -1, inactive is 0, active is 1. That's not so bad. I've seen worse, where you have like a Boolean field where it's null, 0, or 1, and null has some meaning. Mini-Wheats, I can't stand Python personally. I do not like it. I've had to write some for my home automation devices. I hate Python. I hate Python, I hate YAML, anything with significant white space. I hate it. It's not for me. And JavaScript, not a fan. Test helpers are an interesting folder. Can you explain those? I can indeed explain those. And I would be happy to. Although I got an ad starting in about a minute, so maybe after the ad. 90 columns? Oh, no, TVD Gamer. Yikers. That sounds bad. That sounds like it should have been normalized. But do all 90 of those apply to whatever that table is? Like every time? They all have 90 characteristics that are tri-state? Or is it just like a bunch of nulls and like 2 or 3 of those fields are actually used for any given row? Ooh. I'm sorry, TBD Gamer. That does sound unpleasant. Okay, so after the break, I'm going to talk about those test helpers, but the ad starts in 10 seconds. So I'm going to try to make some progress on this validator. We'll see you after the break in 3, 2, 1. Depends on what concept's being represented. Okay, TBD Gamer. I don't know if I want to hear any more about this table. It's making me nervous. It's making me uncomfortable just thinking about it. Because I've seen fields like that where it's just, values that are opaque. And those are a pain. But you have 90 of them? Oh my gosh. I'm just imagining the potential for typos. Just so bad. Mini Wheats, what are you building with JavaScript and Python? Interested to know what kind of stuff you're working on. I assume Python for the back end, JavaScript for the front end, so you're doing like a full stack sort of thing. So this is a PHP you're working on. Please don't blame this on PHP. This is a database problem, not a PHP problem. There's lots of things you can blame on PHP, but that's not one of them. The test factory concept may interest you. Ad break is over in 3 minutes. Yes, Dota 2. This is kind of what it is. It's a test factory. It's called the mother pattern. You probably can't hear me because I'm on a commercial break, so I don't know why I'm talking about this. Okay. I got that validator in place. It's time to write a test. PHP code is written with as much care as a database. Okay, well, there you go. Yes. Again, don't blame PHP itself for that. You can write, there's an expression, you can write COBOL in any language. And yeah. PHP has a lot of good qualities to it. It does, however, unfortunately, it does attract people who are maybe new to development or not developers, and they just, use PHP to bar something out really quick to solve their business problem, which is a great thing about PHP. One of the really great things is how accessible it is, how easy it is to get started. Also, one of the bad things, because you can get started really easily and get started down a wrong path and make junk. Ads are over. Okay, great. I'm glad you're back, but the Streamlabs here says the ad break will end in 1:45. 24 years doing this as a job. You've seen your fair so I assume you're some sort of consultant there, TBD Gamer, going from all different projects and code bases. Hopefully you've seen some good PHP code bases. I'm sure they exist out there. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a controller test for the delete. So it's going to be called delete tests. Delete tests. Just normal work stuff. Huh? Mini Wheats? Just normal work stuff. This is a web integration test, which does similar stuff to the Couchbase integration test, but this is more web focused. DTO helpers are essentially object mother pattern. Yes, I will get into that in a second here. Well, in 53 seconds, I guess. Okay, and go back to update tests. This is the kind of setup I need. I'm just going to borrow that here. I might not need all of this, so I'm going to comment this out until I need it. All right. Public async task. All right. We want to test happy path, so article can be deleted. All right. Arrange, act, assert. And I'm going to borrow some more stuff from this because I can't remember. Right down here. Yes. Web client.put. It's not a put. All right. Welcome back from the commercial break, everybody. I got a question from Dota 2 Attitude about the test helpers. So let's just look at an example here. I think I have a good one. Somewhere, maybe. Get profile. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Okay. Sounds like the devs where you work have a content-rich learning opportunities. Shaking my head. Yes, that's what you would put in the job description. Lots of learning opportunities. AKA lousy code bases. All right. So here is a test right here. This is a that was TPD Gamer. Yes, yeah, right. This is a integration test. This actually hits the database, okay? So I'm testing that the current user, you can get the current user via the handler. All right, so I'm testing this handler. In order to do that, there has to be a user in the database already. So what I've got here is one of those test helpers called create user and database. And so all this does is it will have all these optional parameters. So I can specify email if I want to, specify image, all those sorts of things if I want to. It'll create this object in memory and then connect to Couchbase and put it in there. All right. I want to look at this one here. This one creates it in memory. So again, I have those same options, username, email, and bio. So I can override those if I want to. If I don't override them, this here will say, give me a reasonable default value. So for username, it'll generate something user with a bunch of random characters, email with a bunch of random characters, add example.net, long enough bio, image URL, and so on. It'll generate those unless I specify something. And then it will go ahead and create that user in memory and return it. So all this is doing is creating a user in memory and then putting it in the database. But in a test, I'd have to write that code every single time, or even in just one place. That's going to add like 15 lines of code to this test. So if I put it into this pattern, this create user pattern, the Seth Petrie Johnson, he's the one that kind of taught me about this or developed this at a previous job I was at. He calls the mother pattern. Then I can make my test a lot more succinct. I can override just the data I care about, right? All I care about in this case is the username. I don't care about the email address and all that other stuff. It needs to be valid, but I don't care what it actually is. So this abstracts all that stuff away, makes the test shorter and therefore more readable. And so that's what the test helpers are. I'm interested in seeing this code link you sent for the test factory, which appears to be the same exact thing. Is this using some sort of framework, or no? This is just all hand-coded factories. Yeah. But the difference is, yeah, these are used in a test project. So yeah, these are absolutely the same exact thing. So yeah, you call them test factories, object mother, whatever. It's the same thing. So it's good to know that there's another name for it out there besides mother pattern, test factory pattern. Yeah, that's basically the same thing I'm doing. So this just creates, there's a lot of variation here, which you might need for blackjack. But yeah, in my case, it's just gives me helpers that I can override when I care to, when it matters to the test. Otherwise, their default values, they're valid. I don't care what they are. Yeah, builder pattern, factory pattern, mother pattern. It's all kind of the same thing, but it's specific for tests. It's not something I would use in the actual, the web project itself. These belong to the test collection. They almost could be marked internal, in fact, because I don't want them used outside the test project, but it's not like I'm shipping the test project anywhere. So not a big deal. Okay, so that's the answer to that. Let's get back to article can be deleted. You have an object you want and you modify configuration to build it. Yep. Parameters. I pass parameters to build that object how I need it to be built. All right, article can be deleted. So I've got this delete. This is, there's no payload needed for this because it's a delete. And it's just going to take the slug, so I need an article in this case. I need a real article, so again, I need the mother pattern here. Oh, so we'll do that, and we'll do not users, but article. Since this is the web project, I'm pulling it out of the get required service. Yeah, the Fluent API would make sense as well for this type of pattern. That's actually requires a little more work, I think, to make stuff fluent. But yeah, that absolutely makes sense. That kind of builder pattern, again, for tests. Too many parentheses here. What's going on? Article. Await article, and I want to create article in database. Don't care what it is. Again, I'm using the helper pattern here. This is creating an article in memory, giving it default values. If I override them, it'll override them for me, and then it'll write it to the database. So it's doing all those steps for me, so I can put in one very concise arrange line here. Again, I don't care about the slug. I just need the slug, as long as it's as long as it's valid. So I'm going to assert that response is equal to, response.status code is what I want. Equal to status code OK. Oh, it's HTTP status code. Okay, yep. And I also need to assert that the object is no longer in the database, which is a weird one now because I've got a helper for assert exists, but I don't have one for it does not exist. It might just be, I can do a bang on that. That might be good enough. And I don't need slug. I need, wait, do I need slug? Yes, I need slug. Yes. Slug. And what's the problem there? Slug is not null. Operator cannot be. Oh. Does this throw an assertion or does it return true false? Okay, it throws an assertion. So I kind of need the reverse of this. Assert not exists. This is another test helper I'm using. Are these assert exists? Because I need to test if certain things are in the database and that they match certain criteria. So this will, based on the slug I pass in, it will make sure the article exists, which is what it's doing here, right? And then if I pass in any assertions, which is just a lambda function, it will run those as well. And that's where I can put individual assertions like the title has to equal this, the body has to equal this. Those are optional. But it looks like I need a opposite one here, assert not exists, which is going to take a very similar signature. I don't need the lambdas here because there's nothing to test against. Just need to make sure it's not there. So get the collection, and then I can say, does article exist? You're always confused by what data to put directly in the test versus what to hide by some method. I would say, general rule of thumb is, if it matters to the test, that specific test, that data should be in some form in that test. Now, if it could be a parameter you're passing to a helper, that's fine, but as long as it's in that test. Collection.exists, slug.get article key. And this is just going to assert that does article exist.exists is true. Okay, nice, simple assert not exists helper. So for instance, in this case, I don't care anything about what's in that article, right? But if I was testing like article with a certain title must be deleted, then I have the title here. This information should exist in the test if this title matters to the test. Otherwise, I don't care. Let the helper worry about what the title is. That's my general rule of thumb. So for this test to pass, creating an article in a database, then immediately deleting it via the controller endpoint, and then asserting that it's not in the database anymore. So let's see if this test works. Some title was an option. Oh, optional. Yeah. In this case, this one's an extension method because it actually has to touch the database. So I wrote an extension method to this essentially database provider object. But not all of them are extension methods, right? So create articles, not an extension method. But yes, these are all optional. I don't have to specify these. And if I don't specify them, then they're null. This is the default value they get. And then, therefore, if they're null, then this will fire and say, okay, now I want to set the title to some random title string. These will only fire if those values are null. So if I specify a title, this will basically get ignored. It's not going to give a random title. It's going to use whatever title I specified and then passes on to the actual article. Yes, that's correct. That's how it worked. But yeah, this is an extension method here because it actually touches the database. So I need a database object to do that. And I don't want to use the actual repository because now I'm testing like two things at once. Yeah, the question equals, that is the null assignment. Is that what they call it? Null assignment operator? We can ask GitHub Copilot what it's called. What is the question equals operator called in C#? What do you say, Copilot? It's called the null coalescing assignment operator. There you go. Null coalescing assignment operator. So yeah, question is null coalesce. If you have equal, it's null coalesce operator or assignment operator. So there you go. I don't know how new that is. Not sure when that was first added. My test didn't pass? Oh, because it's not authorized. So I do need to have a user. The current user. That's what I'm doing here. Okay. I forgot all about this. This is an authorized endpoint, period. Whoops. So I still need that. This should probably be in the base class too. User. So that's creating a user, and it's passing that user as the authorization. So I also need to specify that here, author.username. So in this case, this information is important to the test because I need this to be a valid request. Again, I don't really care what the value is. It's just whatever user is generated. Here's another helper up here. And that way it will pass authorization and allow me to delete, which is what I'm trying to test. Article can be deleted. This should pass now. What? Oh, gosh. Yeah, I need to actually create the token and put that in the header, obviously. So the system uses JWT. So if I'm making this request, that token needs to be in the headers of the request. So what this is doing up here is creating a user in the database, and then I can get a token from that user, and it's still not happy. Oh, no, false, because it's testing it doesn't exist. Oh my goodness. See, this is why unit tests are valuable to me, because oftentimes I make simple logic mistakes, like I put true instead of false, or false instead of true. So these tests kind of hammer those out for me. There we go. Okay. Now we can go to the next one. Article for some other author cannot be deleted. Okay, so the user still exists, but I'm make a some other author. So this will be unauthorized, right? Yes, and this is should be the message. To do that, I need to get the response body, which I can't remember how to do that. It's crying out loud. Marcos controller delete right here, maybe. Yep, response string. That's what it is, right there. Okay, so that's response string, and I need to test that there's that error message in there. Assert that response string contains substring. You're not allowed to delete that article. So this should pass because you can't delete someone else's article. Basically, that's all that's trying to say. Passeroo. Okay, and we'll just do one more test for completeness. task. Article, well, what else is in my controller? Article not found. Yeah, let's do that article. You know, it occurs to me that this validator, article delete request validator, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, we can test for that too. Article that doesn't exist. You're doing some TDD in a code base and starting on the auth layer, so interested me in particular. So in general, I would say for auth, yeah, don't build your own auth. Of course, I'm not following those directions here because that would require bringing in a whole other integration. But yeah, in general, don't build your own auth. But if you already got that and you already have to use that, then yeah, some of that helper stuff will make your life simpler. Some create users for you and generate tokens for you. So you'll do that every time in the test. Article that doesn't exist returns not found. Arrange, act, assert. So we're not going to create an article. Don't create an article. Don't create a real article. We're just going to create an article slug. This article doesn't exist. We'll give it a slug service slug delimiter, and then a random string of, I don't know, 10. That's fine. So that's a slug for article doesn't exist. So that's what we're trying to test, a not found, basically. Article slug. Okay, and all I need is just a not found. I don't need anything else. This one should pass. I've already written the code for it. You know, TDD is a really great, valuable idea. I find myself benefiting from it, but like pure TDD almost seems like that's an exercise for a beginner to it. Unauthorized. Oh. Yeah, it would never make it that far because it doesn't exist. I attach my DTOs directly to the class that uses them. Can you give me an example there, Dota? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Fully TDD'd in an ensemble. I mean, I feel like the first few steps of TDD, like, you know, there's no code that even exists yet. Does that really provide any sort of benefit? So I feel like skipping ahead those first few steps. But auth service has claim result and all info attached to them. You mean like they're embedded? Yeah, like right here. Yeah, I felt like those didn't really have any use outside of auth service, so I just thought I'd put them in there. Doesn't have to be the case. Yeah. Okay, so I don't think this could ever happen. How could it happen that article's not found, but yet I'm authorized? Doesn't make any sense. So I don't. What if I change this order? But I think from an end user point of view, for security reasons, I'd rather say unauthorized than not found. The first step in TDD is extremely interesting. I typically just stub out the result and look for. Yeah, it's kind of uninteresting. Yeah, it's those later steps that are more interesting. So that's why I say the pure TDD approach. It's great when you're first learning how to do it. Yeah, this test doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to leave a note here. I don't think this is possible unless there's an extreme edge case. Okay. It's still good to have the code in there. That's fine. And then validation errors. article slug and username. No, article slug must be specified. TDD is just very hard to do in a real code base, that's all. Yeah, I mean, starting from an existing code base that wasn't designed with tests in mind, yeah, that's challenging. Okay, article must be specified. So in this case, there is no slug. Article slug. Can't type. Just an empty string. We can make these a test case, in fact. Valid article slug. And those should return unprocessable. And there should be a response string. And should be a message, expected error message, which should be in the in that response. Yes. And what are those messages? Article delete, request, validator. Article slug is required. Now, author username is required. Should never actually happen. What you're doing here seems not that far from TDD. Yes, you're right. You're right. But this, if someone's like a purist, I don't know who that would be, but they would say you're doing TDD wrong. You're not being explicit enough in all your steps. But I would agree. This is pretty much TDD. Okay. And I want 2 test cases. I also want a null. Let's see if these pass. Uh-oh. As close to a purist as I want to be, I think. I dislike you're doing it wrong. I prefer to be more pragmatic what I'm working on. Method not allowed. What in the world? Method not allowed. What in the world? Your only goal is to increase your confidence that I can change things without breaking things. Yep, I think that's a good attitude to take. And that lines up with the books that I'm reviewing right now. They both make that point quite well. Every once in a while, the authors drop in to the stream, by the way. But yeah, I think I've finished one. I've got 2 chapters left to review, maybe just 1. And it's still a work in progress, so there's more chapters coming. But yeah, I'm working on essentially .NET, C#. One book's about refactoring, and one book is about ASP.NET. They both talk about testing, one more than the other, but they both make that same point about code coverage and TDD and the whole thing. So glad to see that. Now, what the heck is method not allowed? Refactoring is a good topic. Yeah, that's a pretty good book. It's a pretty good book. It's not out yet, but I'm already ready to recommend it. Method not allowed. Is it because I'm not allowed to... Oh, it probably wouldn't make... Yeah, having an empty slug doesn't even make any sense. So, like, ASP.NET's just not allowing it. I think that's what's going on, right? Like, it won't even get to... Like, if I set a breakpoint here, it won't even get there. Which kind of makes sense. Not debug all great. But yeah, if I have /foo/bar/slug, but slug is actually nothing, how does ASP.NET know where to route that? ASP/foo/bar/. There is no /foo/bar route. So it's just like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, so if I hit F5 here, this breakpoint will not get hit. Yeah, hitting the other one there. So what is API article null? Yeah, nothing. That's what I'm saying. It's not going to even put the text null. It's just going to be a blank string. Is how ASP.NET processes that. So I've got a kind of some redundant checks for no real reason. 81, 82, you have some weird values for invalid article slug. Yeah, these are invalid. Empty string and null, which essentially resolves to empty string over here. This won't turn into the literal string null. So this is ASP.NET already prevents this. So it's still good to leave these tests here as kind of documentation. In a sense, like, why didn't he test for this? Oh, because ASP.NET already does it. So, all right, I think I'm pretty happy with this endpoint. Let's try it in a browser, see if it works. It's always important. I need to add documentation still, but all right. So here is the whole API that I've created so far. Let's do a little bit of testing here. So we're going to start by, we're just going to go through the whole thing, I guess. We're going to register a new user. We're going to register Dota2 attitude. And your email address is dota2@fbi.gov. And your password is Dota's strong password 01 exclamation point. So there we go. You're in my system now, Dota, assuming this works. Which it does. There's your JWT token. Expires in 4 hours, something like that. We'll go use it up here. Paste in your token. And now you're making authorized requests. So you want to create an article, right? Probably what the first thing you want to do. And Dota, let's call this, I haven't played Dota in a decade. I don't know, whatever it was. A decade. Description, this is all about my lack of Dota playing. In the body, lorem ipsum Dota. Make that a nice long body here. And the tags, of course, we'll tag it with baseball, because it's one of the tags that I allow. Okay. Execute this. And there we go. So that article exists. Here's your slug. We can go ahead and get that article out. If I just do a get. This does not require authentication, but execute. And there's the article. All right, created at. Oh, updated at. I don't like that. It should be nullable, I think. Article right here. Yeah, this should be nullable. Is that going to break anything? Yep. Because updated at is not set. Baseball is a scary sport, so many injuries. I mean, there are lots of injuries, yes, but I don't think there's nearly as bad as football. Your object mother didn't see IDs in it. Okay, so with IDs, it works a little differently in Couchbase, as does relational databases. So right here for, well, let's go user instead. So for user, the username is the ID. That's the key to the documents. That's why I have JSON ignore here. I don't want that username in the actual document. I can kind of show you what this looks like. If you look at users, so here's Dota2. Here's your user, right? Dota2 attitude is the key. Partition key. In Couchbase, you don't need partition keys. This is just the document key itself. So if I want to look up Dota2 attitude, I have Dota2 attitude's username. I can look them up. And notice username is not in the data. It's just the key. I don't want to store duplicate data, so that's why they're just in the key. But there's your email, your password, and so on are there in the key. With articles, what I have is called an article key, which is randomly generated. But notice that it's actually also used in the slug. So there is some duplication here. Notice on line 2, after the colon, there's the slug, or there's the article key. It's in the slug itself. The reason I do this, and I discussed this on previous streams, is that in this system, in Conduit, it's one of the requirements is that if I change the title, I have to change the slug. That's why I have it set up this way. So that little article key will never change. It will always be in the slug, but the first part of the slug can change. That key isn't guaranteed to be unique. It's not a UUID, no. You're correct in the sense that it's not guaranteed to be unique, but I think it's unique enough. And my inspiration for this is kind of Medium and Stack Overflow. So if you look at Medium, I'll look at one of these articles, you'll see they do something very similar up here. Almost identical, in fact. There's the slug, and then there's a unique string at the end. Stack Overflow does the same thing. It has a little different structure, but there's a unique number, and then the slug. But this is for the same reason, because someone could change this title, and that changes the slug. So if I change this to Dota 2, this isn't the slug anymore, it will still go to this page, because all it's going on is this number right there. And that's probably a incremented ID, like an ID number. I know they use SQL Server behind the scenes, Stack Overflow. So that is guaranteed to be unique in a sense, right? But Medium is doing it this way, probably for the same reason I'm doing it, because it's being stored in some sort of key value system. Could there be 2 Burning Man articles, so they have to be Burning Man? Yes, that's another reason that I put that on the end, is to prevent collisions between titles. So there could be, if you're an author and I'm an author, we could both have an article with the same exact title, but it has a different slug. So they're still unique articles. That's another reason to have those in there. Yep, so you got it. You're all caught up. That's the whole reason for that. Where were we? We're testing this guy. Will it still work? Oh, it's not running. Shut down. Structure of NoSQL is so different from SQL. Because I'm using the key value API, the structure might seem a little different, but to me, there's a lot that's familiar and similar here. If we go back to not this. Oh, it was a Burning Man article. I didn't even notice. If we go back to this, in Couchbase, we have these things called buckets. These are essentially just databases, right? If I go into that, these are, we were talking about schemas earlier, DBO. I've put everything in _default, which is like DBO. But inside of that, there's all these collections, articles, favorites, follows, tags, users. These are basically like tables, the same kind of level. And inside of articles, we've got, they're not rows, they're documents, but it is essentially like a row of data. Each has a primary key. It's not called a primary key, it's a document key or ID, but it's kind of works the same way. And then the data itself, it's not columns, but it's fields that are in all these documents. One kind of key difference here is the tag list is a little easier to store. I can embed that as an array. That's a pretty cool feature. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities, I think. There are differences, yes, and there's reasons why one's better than the other, but there's a lot in common, I think. Okay, where was I? I was trying to get article. I don't know if I'm authorized anymore, so let's use that JWT token. Fortunately, I copied it to a notepad over here, so I still have all the information. This would normally be handled by, of course, the front end. Okay, so there's the article, and updated that is still this. I got to work on that, but Couchbase, you can run more similar to SQL, do the querying. Yes, that's another part of Couchbase that makes it more familiar. Is it's a full SQL query language. So, in my point of view, and this is why I came to Couchbase in the first place, it's a lot easier to go from relational to Couchbase than it is relational to anybody else. Maybe Cosmos accepted because they have some SQL there too. It's not a full implementation, but yeah, that's one of the reasons I like Couchbase, and I still like Couchbase to this day after 7.5 years working here. So I got to figure out this update issue later, but in the meantime, I want to focus on delete. So what if I delete foo, which doesn't exist? Oh, okay, interesting. I get a exception. Huh. Okay, that is something I have to test for, I think. Not even a valid slug. Where was this? This was article delete. Article delete update test, right? No. Delete tests. So I'm going to make another test here. Async task unprocessable with invalid slug. This is unprocessable. Okay, let's see. Cosmos looks a lot different than the SQL Server stuff. Yeah. You updated the article to get the new value in, or did you look at an old generated? I looked at an old generated one. I didn't update. I didn't use the update endpoint yet. I'm not worried about update right now. I'm just trying to test the delete. But I need to write the test for that. So I'm going to put in a not implemented here, so I don't forget about that. So anyway, here's the valid slug. You know, I could put in a fake slug I just made up and just put a bunch of characters in. What happens here? It says you're not allowed to delete that article. Okay, that's the unauthorized. All right, so now let's put in the slug for the real article and delete. Article's deleted. Okay, great. So if I go and try to get that article now, it's going to say article not found. There we go. So that's working great. I need to figure out this one though. So this is a invalid slug because it doesn't have any sort of that appendix on it right there. That, you know, it doesn't have this, which would make it valid. So what happens with an invalid slug? I don't need to create an article. Invalid slug, and this is the slug right here. What would I expect to happen in this case? I would expect to be unprocessable. Or probably not found, actually. There's never going to be a slug or an article with that slug. So article not found. So I want to keep that response string after all. So this should fail, right? Which I just tried it. Is Couchbase fast, similar to NoSQL? I know our Cosmos is less than 20 milliseconds return times, where the DB adds quite a bit of latency. SQL, yeah. So I know Cosmos has those guarantees, like 20 milliseconds, that sort of thing. So with Couchbase, if you're using the key value API, remember it has a cache built in, so you're often pulling right from RAM. So we're talking microseconds for those types of lookups. I'm not sure if I can demonstrate that here. It doesn't. If I click on this, it doesn't show timings or anything. But yeah, I mean, using the key value API, it's, you know, generally speaking, it's microseconds. Very, very fast. It's one of the things that Couchbase is really good at. It's why some people just use it as a cache on its own. It's just so fast. But of course, then you take the next step. You're doing SQL queries. It's going to get a little slower because now you have to do query parsing and indexing and, you know, lookups and things like that. And so that's going to be in the milliseconds range. It could, of course, go crazy depending on your query, right? It could get into seconds or even longer if you have a complex query. But generally speaking, you have a good index, and you're not doing select star. You mentioned covering indexes earlier. If you have a covering index, it's going to be very, very fast. But it's not going to hit microseconds because of all the parsing and stuff that SQL query needs to do. So it's going to be milliseconds for that. Generally speaking, your mileage may vary. Okay, so this fails because it did internal server error. Wait, what? You just learned about covering indexes, yeah. I think in general developers are kind of behind on indexes in general. Okay, internal server error. What? Okay, close all this stuff off. Why is it internal server error? Let's go through. We'll step through it. Explain plans, you don't understand all the operators. That's why I prefer the visual explain plans. Those a little easier for me to understand, where it shows you like green, yellow, red, all the different steps. I much prefer those. Those are in SQL Server and they're in Couchbase there. And other databases I'm sure have similar visual explain plans. It's all about the tools really. If you just look at the raw explain text, like in Couchbase it's this big JavaScript or JSON object of all kinds of information, and I'm sure it's useful to somebody, but for me, I want to see visually, like, where's the problem? Okay. All right. So it's passing in an invalid slug. Sends it off to the mediator. So this is article delete handler. Okay. It's valid. So this goes to article author. So this should be, yeah, should try to look it up, and oh, this is where it throws an exception. What exception is it throwing? Argument exception. Okay, so I should catch this. Argument exception. Also return false. There's some obvious stuff, like it's ordering the data is bad, but a loop thing is better than a hash match. I have no idea. Oh, the old... Okay. I think I wrote a blog post on this, in fact, because it also applies to Couchbase. Let's see if I can find this. You swallow the exception. In this case, yes. Because I know that this means that the slug is not valid. So it's not, I don't want this to bubble up to the user, so I'm just going to swallow it and say, article's not found, or this article does not, it's not valid. All right, let's see. Did I write up a blog post on this? Blog Couchbase, nested loop versus hash. Was this me? It is me, yes. Back in 2018, I wrote this blog post. This is when we first introduced ANSI joins to Couchbase. This is back in 5.5. We're at 7.2 now, I think. So the difference here is that we got hash joins and nested loop. Those are different ways to approach joins, and you can really get deep into this if you want to, and I think I did back in 2018. But basically, hash join is going to be faster. Nested loop is what it sounds like. There's a loop and another loop inside to check both sides. Hash join is only going to do one check because it's going to hash the left side and the right side. So generally speaking, it's going to be faster. In some cases, it might not be, I guess. Hash join can sometimes be more performant than nested loop, and hash join isn't dependent on the index, but it only works for equality joins only. At least that was the case in Couchbase back then. I don't know if that's changed or not. So here's some examples of it. I've forgotten a lot of this stuff, but yeah, I do remember hash join and nested loop join. There's both possible. I think it's not always possible to use hash join, so that's why sometimes you'll still need nested loop. So there you go. Some more database nerd stuff. There's a left join that you were doing. Oh, okay. Well, that might be difficult. I don't know, because it might be null on some sides, so I don't know. Okay, so this test should now pass. Is unprocessable? Well, let's see. Let's see what happens. No, not unprocessable. Article not found is what I wanted to do. And oh, still not happy. Unauthorized. Again, I think this just goes back to there's no way that this will do this. So I think it's just going to be unauthorized. Why aren't I throwing that exception? So, I mean, we can talk about this. So, this method is saying, is this article, is this author of the article, is this article authored by the given user? That's all this method is trying to tell me. So this is going to hit the database, look up the author username, see if it matches, and return true if it matches, false if it doesn't. This is just checking authorization. There's some edge cases here, right? So if the document isn't found, right, then I've got a slug that's made up or doesn't exist anymore or whatever. Do I want to return an exception on that? I think not. I think I just want to say, no, the article's not, they don't match up because it already doesn't exist. Same thing here, argument exception. If a slug is passed in that's invalid, doesn't have that little suffix on the end, I can't do anything with that. So just no, it's not the article author. Just not allowed. So that's all I'm really doing with that. I don't see any benefit of throwing those and handling them in the handler. I guess I could put them here instead. I could put the try catch here. That would be the alternative, but it'd be basically the same thing. So I don't know. It could go either way, I guess. I could put it here or put it down in the data layer. You swallowed the air. It seemed harder to find the failure. Yeah, in a sense, I guess. It might make sense to put some logging in there. I could also create some custom exceptions, but really all I care about is, yeah, it did fail later. Really all I care about is, and at the end, invalid slug means it's just gonna say unauthorized. That's all I really care about. So yeah, there's certainly more robust ways we can go about it. Create custom exceptions, potentially handle those in the handler, but I don't see any benefit to those, at least not right now. In the future, maybe. Okay, let's just go with that. All right, so I'm pretty happy with the way this works. It's time to commit. And the number of this one is, no, not update article. 18, delete article. So this is 18. Delete article, endpoints, and tests. All right, so these are all the new files. You know, I like to always go through and check out what I'm committing. So that's kind of related to the articles one. Article non-exists. Yep, keep that one in. Articles controller. So this is, yep, that makes sense. That's a to-do, so I'll leave that one out of this commit. That's the next one. Oh, I'm almost out of time. Gosh. Delete article and is article author. Those stay. Article view model. That's going to go into later commit. And so is that. Okay. So we'll commit those. I haven't checked the run, but it looks like that one, the last one I committed, or last one I pushed, passed. That's always good. We're just about done for the day. So do have to go back to the update article. That's why I moved it back into here, because I need to, one, figure out that updated at date thing. It should not return 0001 for a year. It should return null, probably. And then I need to also make sure that I can't update other people's articles. So I can't go in and make changes to Dota 2's article. I can only change my own. So I need to add that reuse that is article author method there. Shouldn't be too difficult. But I'm not going to do that today. I will go ahead and add some documentation. Do I have time? I probably don't. The next step is to add docs to delete article, which is essentially I need to add those XML comments like so. If you remember back here at the swashbuckle generated Swagger, OpenAI, all this stuff has documentation, right? So update article, it's got documentation, it's got a link to the spec. I can look at the schema and see what's required. All this stuff is there. All the entities are down here. All the schemas are down here. So all that stuff's important. I haven't done that yet for updating articles, so I need to do that next. But we're almost out of time here, and I need to figure out who we're going to raid next. Who do we got? Pirate Software. I haven't been Tim Bodette's in a while. He's doing some game dev there, it looks like. Let's do Tim Bodette. Hey, TBD, thanks for stopping by. I hope to see you next week, Tuesdays and Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to raid Tim. Everybody say hi to Tim and be nice to him over there. I will see you on Tuesday. Yeah, great to see you again, Dota and TBD. Glad you're here. And we'll see you all on Tuesday. Thanks for watching.